Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Near Memo. This is episode 206, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. And we're joined today by our very, very special guest and friend of Near Media, longtime colleague, Cindy Krum, CEO and founder of Mobile Moxie and woman about town, traveling like a maniac, as always, it would appear. Before we get into it, I want to thank our sponsor, Gather Up, and want to let you know about their great event coming up, Amp Up, which you can learn more about at go.gatherup.com/amp up 2025. It's directed at digital marketers and agencies who are trying to stay on top of the latest developments in this very, very fast moving market that we're now going to be talking with Cindy about, and specifically about search. Mike is one of the featured speakers. It's a virtual event. You should tune in, and it's free. Going to have a lot of great information. So check that out, go.gatherup.com /amp up 2025. Having said all of that, welcome, Cindy, again to the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing okay. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. So as part of your world
With
tour...
certain asterisks, caveats.
Yes, as always. I once said to somebody, I'm the person who says yes, but, and I want to just be the person who says yes. That's my ambition, one of my ambitions in life.
He's got a ways to go.
Yes, but. Okay, so you were at SEO Week last week, which was apparently a fantastic event. A lot of great speakers and information. You were one of them. And you articulated this very provocative theory about where search is going. Tell us about that, and then we'll jump into our interrogation.
Yeah, sure. So what I talked about is something that's been kind of near and dear to my heart for a little while, but that hasn't really caught on with the rest of the SEO community. And that is Google Mum, which is kind of a learning model that adds things that are not written text, so non kind of straightforward language, to the learning model. So it stands for Multitask Unified Model. Those words kind of mean nothing. It's mostly, people usually think of multimodal instead of multitask, but it's really called multitask. But it is multimodal, so it brings together the idea of images, videos, maps, kind of fact sheets, and all these things, and puts them together with an entity to make kind of a fan out understanding of the entity and all the actions or journeys that could be associated with the entity. So what I was talking about was Mum and Mum journeys and how they are going to impact SEO. So I kind of say Google started with Google and kind of SEO started by looking at keywords and organizing by keywords, and then we moved on to entities, and now the next phase is going to be these Mum journeys, and we need to optimize for those. So I talked about how that fits in with all the AI changes, and also how it fits in with something that you guys, I know, remember that was really big deal for a while that Google stopped talking about, which was micro moments. And for a while they were a really big deal, especially in local, and especially Google positioned it with mobile and local too, and they were saying, now that everything's mobile, we care about these micro moments, really actionable kind of things that people are trying to do. And what I said was, Google is kind of trying to filter all of the queries into one of the 4 micro moments, and I talked through how they've monetized each one of those 4. And I can go more into that if you want, but I know that's kind of a lot of ideas all at once.
So just give me an example of how multimedia is integrated into entities. Let's take any entity, a business or a person. There's a video about you. Is this so they'll look at the video and somehow integrate knowledge from the video into some sort of representation of you, the entity, or?
Yeah, exactly. So the example that Google uses is Mount Fuji. There are a lot of things that you might want to do associated with Mount Fuji. You might want to paint it. You might want to study the flora.
I like the Cindy Krum example better, but okay.
Mount Fuji is perhaps more instructive, though, because there are...
Perhaps.
You might want to go to coffee with Cindy Krum. You might want to talk to Cindy Krum. You might want to complain about politics with Cindy Krum. These are the micro moments surrounding Cindy Krum.
Yeah. Google's trying to figure out what journey the searcher is on so that they can serve them better results, including better paid results. And in some cases, or in many cases, the argument says those journeys are well monetized. So the 4 micro moments are, I want to know, I want to I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, I want to buy. So I want to know is informational queries. I want to go is local queries. I want to do is kind of more entertainment queries. And I want to buy is shopping queries. And then if you just look at those really quickly, shopping queries are obviously monetized with Google Merchant Center. Local queries are monetized with Google My Business and also the local data and now Merchant Center that goes into the business profiles. And then I want to know is informational queries monetized like traditional PPC search queries are. And then the interesting one, and I think the one where Google might be making a lot of money that people don't realize is I want to do. And that one tends to get you a lot of YouTube results. And then they get you into YouTube and then you disappear in a YouTube hole with lots of ads for a really long time and they make a lot of money there. So Google it's not as obvious that Google's making money in every stage, but often they are, just with different business entities.
All right. So that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, sorry.
So no apologies. So you also talked about, I don't want to take us into a completely different area, but this is obviously related. You talked about a vision of how you think that Google is going to sort of marry Discover and traditional search and AI mode. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think that this journey monetization is crucial for Google's success plan related to all of their work in AI overviews and AI mode, AI organized search results. So what we know about AI from every company that's doing AI and AI search is that it's very expensive. From Google's perspective, it's like 100 times more expensive to serve a result with an AI overview than it is.
Although the costs have come down. But yes, but more expensive generally.
Even still, more expensive. And so Google has to figure out a way to offset those costs.
Lay people off.
Yeah, and so the thought is that they're going to have to monetize those monetized searches better. And the way that I think that they're going to do that is with this journey optimization, because remember what they're saying about AI overviews when SEOs complain and say, oh, well, AI overviews are stealing my traffic. Google says, oh, well, we might not be sending you as much traffic, but we're sending you more qualified, better traffic. And if they think that's true for organic, they probably think that's true for paid as well. They probably know that it's true because they have the data. So what they're trying to do is get ads that fit better into the actual journey that you're on so that you're more likely to click on the ad because it's relevant, and then you're more likely to convert. And when they can have a higher kind of conversion rate on ads as a whole, they can charge more, and ads are becoming the only guaranteed way or semi-guaranteed way that you can show up as organic is being pushed down and out. And so I think they'll be able to charge more for ads. They'll be able to say that the ads are better, and users won't mind because the ads are going to be more relevant when they have these really personalized journeys that combine AI and AI mode or AI organized search results or AI overviews, all of that, with the personalization layer that comes in Discover. And remember, Discover started as like Google Now, didn't it? Or it had a couple names before it became Google Discover. And the original plan was personalized search results that are so personalized you don't even have to do a search. It knows what you want before you search for it. And remember, they've never been able to do Google Discover logged out. And in fact, only this month have they been able to do it on desktop.
Yeah, it sucks when I've been logged out for a long time. I've had to opt back in because of AI mode, and Discover is just worthless in a logged out context.
When it's new, it's worthless because it doesn't know anything about you.
Right.
But when you have used logged in accounts, and especially on Android phones, the results tend to be much better because they're tracking you the whole time and all your interactions. So they know more about you, so they can do a better job predicting.
So let's just assume that the representation about the quality of traffic from an AI result is better. I mean, there's been enough anecdotal information about that also from the ChatGPT side that those people are more qualified. So let's assume that is true for purposes of discussion. In terms of the personalization, I mean, that's a very interesting feature of this new AI reality because it makes AI much stickier than search because of the memory capability. So you can just go back to a conversation and you can leave a conversation, move on to something else and come back. Do you remember when we were talking about planning this trip to Spain and then pick up where you left off? And that creates enormous stickiness. And it also delivers to whoever the provider is enormous data that can be used for ads or other kinds of targeting. I mean, the Perplexity CEO said he wanted to build a browser. He wants to buy Chrome. He's part of the list of people who wants to buy Chrome to track everything that everybody does. He says in order to improve his ad. I mean, he's sort of a tone deaf kind of admission, but to improve ad targeting. And so this is one of the this has to be one of the you said this, one of the primary motivations of Google to integrate all these things is to get much more data about people than they already have, which is considerable.
One of the nags on my Mac that I was always wondering about, but I finally figured out, was when Chrome asks me if it can see, if I should allow it to see all the devices on my network. And I realized the other day that it was a fingerprinting technology that they could then, once they can see my devices, I'm the only person with this particular, or one of the few people with this particular combination of devices. So it's really very much deeper personalization across the internet through the browser.
And that's iOS, who prides themselves on privacy, right? So if Apple's doing that, what do we think Google's doing?
Well, Apple is asking me if I want to let Chrome do it or Edge do it. Every week that
I mean,
query
it's
comes
worse.
up and I say no. Right.
It's worse on Android. It's much worse on Android.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it
well,
is.
but you don't have a choice on Android. You can't say no to a question. You have no idea why they're even asking. Like, I spent 6 months looking at that question. Why do they want to know every device on my local network?
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
it's a
and
fingerprint.
if you remember the annual announcements for both Apple and Google, both of them talked about AI at the operating system level on your phone. So Gemini especially is an operating system, not just browser. And so what that means is it's seeing everything that happens in your browser, but also in your apps and account wide.
Yeah, I mean, the Meta AI standalone AI app that they just released is apparently some privacy nightmare where they're just going to take everything, and funnel it into ad targeting on other properties, Facebook and Instagram and and Threads now. So I mean, there's a whole digression about privacy and all of that we probably can leave for another time.
I think there is one comment about privacy that's relevant here, and that is that the social context around it, in terms of both political and Silicon Valley, has shifted very heavily in the last 6 months to a reduction of privacy at all levels.
Well, I mean, I think there's no surprise for that for many reasons. There's going to be no enforcement. The federal government has signaled it's completely hands off where consumer issues are concerned. I mean, there is still state enforcement in California in particular, but other states as well are starting to enforce their privacy laws and finding people. So there's going to be tension there. But I think the tech companies are less fearful, notwithstanding the antitrust cases that are going on, less fearful of the government intervening in their business practices than they used to be.
Yeah.
And
well,
so they're, yeah,
even if the antitrust cases go as they have been going, meaning that Google is a monopoly, there's not, the enforcement is unclear, and it might be kind
years
of a
out,
bit
years out.
The administration.
So let's talk about how does the personalization of search, assuming that it's happening, it's definitely happening with AI stuff. Although I haven't seen it in search per se. I'm a heavy ChatGPT user. I use most of the other tools as well. And I see the personalization is obviously there for these conversations and the informational stuff. It's less obvious to me on the straight search side when I do a search in ChatGPT for hotels in such and such a place or product comparisons. I'm not seeing that as much, except in terms of it's being remembered and me being able to come back to it. But let's assume that Google is moving in the direction that you're talking about for ad targeting purposes. What does this mean for content and SEO in terms of being able to reach people in these journey optimization scenarios that you're laying out?
And how MUM plays into that strategy.
Yeah. So what I've been saying is when you have an entity that you care about, that you are ranking on or could be ranking on, it's a good idea to go in and see how Google understands the entity and the subsequent related journeys. So what that would look like is doing a bunch of test searches and writing down all the filters that come up and clicking on all the filters and finding out the next level of filters that come up and kind of making a map of the entity understanding that Google has. And then when you click on it, seeing if the format of the search result or the content of the search result changes drastically. So for instance, if you're searching for, I'm trying to think of the best example for you guys. If you're searching for a book and you just want a review of the book, then you know that Google can get you into that funnel, but you're not necessarily trying to buy it, so they're not going to send you to Merchant Center. But they're probably going to show a filter that allows you to jump to that Merchant Center result and buy it really quickly because they want to monetize it. And so if you search for just the book name, then you get info on the book and probably options to buy it because that's the quickest way to monetize. If you search for reviews, then they focus on the reviews, but then they also are trying to get you into that Merchant Center kind of funnel. So it's just a matter of like mapping out the possible journeys, making sure that you're matching it, and then also being in the places that Google is sending the journeys. So if you see that Google has part of your entity classified as I want to do kind of query, and they're showing lots and lots of YouTube results, then making sure that you have the content in YouTube, knowing that Google's probably not going to give up on that path, and that you might need to focus on optimizing that kind of a query towards ranking with videos in YouTube and shorts rather than building a new page on your site.
And these paths are proxies for intent, user intent that Google has inferred from all the tons of data that it has over time.
Yeah, the way they started talking about micro moments years ago was that people on their phones don't have much time. They want to get to the point really fast. And that's, from their perspective, get to the point is get to the conversion.
Could you repeat the four of them once again, just to bring people back into the memory of that?
I want to know. I have to say them all in order. I can't remember them. I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, I want to buy.
And the do, as distinct from go and buy, is, clarify that again. You said it was so entertainment
oriented, and then there's also this one category that I kind of include in there, which is like travel and hotel bookings.
It's like a planning.
Yeah, entertainment. So like travel and hotel bookings, I kind of classify as I want to do, like I want to go on a trip. I want to listen to Lady Gaga. It's something that you're going to do. So all of the monetization that happens with Google Flights and Google Hotels, that kind of falls in there.
But it seems like so go would be just strictly local stuff. I want to find the nearest fill in the blank, whatever that is. Who seems to be sort of span, the traditional informational, navigational, commercial, and transactional query kind of funnel that often is discussed. Do seems to span a couple of those, because what I'm inferring, I remember the micro moments terminology. I don't remember all the different nuances. What I'm inferring is that do includes maybe a planning component and an action component. I'm doing research on a trip. I'm not ready to book, but I will eventually book. Or I've done my research and now I'm coming to book. Because
I think it's more the latter. It's more ready.
You think it's entirely transactional, and you would put everything sort of planning oriented into the know bucket, the informational query bucket.
Yeah, planning oriented would be I want to know, and then execution of what you've researched is I want to do. But not necessarily, I worry about calling it transactional because listening to Lady Gaga is not necessarily transactional, but it's actually the act of doing something.
So let's say action oriented. So do, go, and buy are all actions, and know is all informational queries. Okay, so let's talk about informational queries, because that is obviously an area of enormous change right now. It's been estimated that informational queries represent 70 to 80+% of all queries. Who knows what's really the number, but it's basically the majority of queries. People trying to learn things as a precursor to action, or just general information that they're trying to understand. Song lyrics, tree, identify the tree. What does it cost to do this? What does this drug do? So on and so forth. AI overviews occupy that space for the most part. They don't tend to show up today, even though they're starting to show up for local. They don't tend to show up today quite as frequently for these other action-oriented or commercial categories as they do for informational categories. And so let's talk about that and AI overviews and ads and how, there is some erosion in Google AI overview in the informational category. I mean, Apple sort of confirmed this. Google has itself confirmed this. And my anecdotal experience and survey data seems to show that some percentage of informational queries are starting to fragment or migrate away from Google as a sort of a premise for this discussion. So there's a bunch of stuff in there. Comment on whatever part of that you want to comment on, and we'll go deeper.
Yeah, I think what Google is banking on is this idea that they know customers better than any of the other platforms. So even though people might be trying ChatGPT or Perplexity or Copilot, things like that, they think that the default behavior will remain to go to Google, especially if they can get this kind of roll up of Google Discover and AI overviews that is really competitive with a ChatGPT kind of conversational experience.
Good enough, good enough in this case.
Good enough. Yeah. But if you think about the other place that we're seeing AI overviews, but that not everyone has noticed, is as responses and people also ask results. And so Google's putting AI overviews instead of links to websites as a when you expand the people also ask. Let's think about why they would be doing that. Because number one, they're trying to build out the journey and understand which people also ask question is the next most likely question. So they want to know the journey so they can model it. And the idea with modeling these journeys is once you've modeled a journey, you can anticipate what the next person that's very like that person is going to do. And so you don't have to put so much compute power into generating the AI response when you have a model and a path that's well worn. You know what people are going to want. So they're benefiting from modeling the journey just by knowing where you click in people also ask. But beyond that, think about how, like Google in 2018, Google talked about their goal after they launched mobile first indexing. Their goal for the future of search was to make it more personalized, more predictive, and more conversational. When you get to the people also ask, that is very much in the line of conversational, and ChatGPT is winning because it's is not winning, but it's gaining ground because it's conversational. So I think Google is using people also ask to get into a conversation. So if you think about and to map it and plan that conversation. If you think about how a conversation like this one in real life works, you asked a question, I answer it, and I think of a follow-up question, or you're thinking of a follow-up question, or both answering it in the moment, but also thinking about the next thing. And that's what Google is doing with people also ask, is they're anticipating the next most likely question and the way that the direction the conversation is going.
So in local, I don't know if you've been following this, but there's two modules we're seeing. One is learn something specific or ask maps about this place where you can do a query, totally conversational. And then in addition, there's another AI module called Know Before You Go, which is essentially people also ask, but it's predetermined answers generated by that system. So in local, we're seeing the equivalent. They're marked as AI modules. One is a conversational and one is more informational, statement driven.
Yeah. And it's probably the case that kind of conversational interaction has a slightly different fine tuning in how it works because it already knows where you are in the path and what you want to do.
It's more structured, right. Also, I think the data
right. It shows up on a brand search, right? Yeah, it shows up on a brand search. So we're dealing with Barbara Oliver jewelry. Learn something specific, right?
Or
we can
ask about your restaurant or whatever.
Right. We can learn about the employees, right, the people that work. That you have a dog.
Limited universe. Right. Limited of questions and content there to draw from, and more discrete sort of sources.
I have a question for you about AIOs. Generally, when I try them in local, several things. One is they're not as visually compelling as local. They don't have the review stars. They don't have the ratings. They don't have as many pictures. And the other is they seem to be less geographically constrained, right? So I'll go in and it will show broader geographies than local, which is a very constraining, almost brittle 2-mile radius. And I'm just curious how you think that fits into this conversation, or is that just both of those are just early behaviors and you think they'll change depending on usage, or you think it's a smarter environment, it'll show broader or potentially show broader results?
Yeah, so I think that part of what you're talking about is related to Google's cost savings goals. So one of the other announcements that made me start to think that Google is going to combine Google Discover with AI overviews in a highly personalized situation is in the same kind of 2-week period when Google announced that Google Discover was coming to desktop, Google also announced quietly that they were going to consolidate all the Google CCTLDs internationally.
Yeah.
And that was something that they first tried to do after mobile first indexing, but it failed and they kind of had to give up. So I think that they're trying to do that again. And that's only a couple months after Google started rolling out AI overviews internationally. So they roll out AI overviews internationally, then they combine the CCTLDs into all just google.com, and then they add Google Discover Desktop. This all looks like it's headed towards a consolidation, but it's an international style consolidation. So I think AI overviews in the beginning, before we add in the Google Discover piece, are going to have to be not very local specific, because the way that the AI model is trained is by volume, and local specific queries have too low of a volume for Google to learn quickly. So I think when Google starts getting people into this Google Discover plus AI overview thing, or this more personalized thing, that whatever they call it, that's when they're going to be able to do better with AI local optimization, because they're going to have a cohort, and Google Discover has always been hyper personalized and localized, at least more, because it knows exactly where you are. So they'll have a cohort of people in your area to learn from, and not learn from the rest of the world. And they'll kind of segment that off and say, this is our learning model for that, and we're not going to let it get polluted with the rest of the world. And that'll be a faster, more efficient learning model than what they're doing for the larger AI overviews that are more generic, that they want to learn about, where do oak trees live? That's something that we can, answer in a large way. But then, why is my oak tree in Denver, Colorado dying this year? That's a much more specific query,
Do we need to send you a sympathy card, Cindy?
No, I don't actually have an oak tree that's dying.
Oh, okay, good.
That's good.
Good.
Well, there may be a problem with the domain consolidation and all the data consolidation on the back end in Europe. I mean, this was a problem for them before. We can leave that. We can sort of footnote that and talk about it at some future point. As you discuss all this, one of the things that strikes me is that Google is really doing everything. I mean, assuming that what I mean, I think you're very thoughtful about all these things, and I think you're directionally, at least, if not exactly correct. But Google is doing everything from the standpoint of its needs, right? It's not really thinking about so Google, as you talked about all these things, it strikes me that Google is doing all of these things from the standpoint of its own needs. Its needs for data, its needs for monetization, its need to understand user intent, sort of ostensibly to benefit the user by delivering a better experience. But it's not really doing that. I mean, it's not really thinking what is the best user experience. It's thinking, how can we migrate what we have today to something that is competitive with our rivals, and preserve the monetization and get as much data as we can to achieve whatever sort of secondary subsidiary objectives, which from a sort of product design standpoint is bad. It's bad, and will result in a suboptimal experience. I think if you were to come in and say, design the next generation search experience with all the technology that exists today, what would that look like? It would
Make
not
Google
look like,
great again.
Yeah, right, exactly. It would not look like what Google is doing, at least on the search side. The sort of messy and weird AI overviews, the clutter, the over monetization, all of that stuff. This is a byproduct of sort of the kind of accretive, incremental changes that have happened over time. It would, if you threw the whole thing out and started over, it would look quite different. I mean, it might look slightly more like AI mode, but it would look very different. And I think that, the idea of sort of, we're going to do this AI overview stuff, and we're going to have AI mode over here, and that's going to be enough of a taste of conversational search to keep the people who are inclined to defect to Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, from leaving Google, because we're going to offer, the familiar, reliable Google search results, and this taste of the other thing. That's just a sort of an editorial comment. I don't know.
Well, I'd be curious to understand how Cindy sees this visually. What what you would predict is the visual outcome of the integration here, and how long do you think it will take?
You're
To
talking about the
answer
UI?
Greg's,
You're talking
yeah,
about the UI. Yeah.
the UI, right? I mean, have you thought about it, or does it fit into your theories?
It's a great question. I haven't thought about it too much because I feel like they're not going to get it right the first try, and it's going to go through a lot of iterations. And I think Google is going to have to, I don't know, do a lot of testing. Like I don't see this combination of Google Discover and AI overviews necessarily happening really quickly and really out front. I think it's going to be subtle, and things are going to be kind of rolled and folded together with different names, but it'll be similar, the same technology. I
Gemini
think
73?
yeah, something like that. Yeah, and they hide things with new names, when it's really just the same thing with an upgrade or addition or something like that. So, but visually, that's a really interesting question. I think that they might start by making the Google Discover feed your default Google screen and force it on everyone when they open Chrome, a new Chrome window. They go to their Google Discover feed, and it'll show them like a Yahoo kind of.
Well, that's the mobile experience on the app. That's the
Yeah.
mobile experience on the app today.
Yeah. So I think they'll do that. I mean, at least for me on Google, when I open Chrome, I just always go to existing tabs that I have open, and same on desktop. But I think they might kind of force every time you do a refresh or you have left Chrome for a while, they might like try and acclimate people to the Discover experience more by kind of making it more prevalent, and then adding an AI component to Google Discover, and then kind of pushing people more and more away from regular Google to this new experience, until we don't even recognize it. It's so subtle, the frog's boiled.
I think that Google is really profoundly ambivalent about doing this, because I don't think that I think they've got a Gemini, which they've decided, I guess, is not the consumer experience. That's the B2B work tool. Then they've got AI mode, and then they've got AI overviews. And AI mode and AI overviews will give you different content for the same query. And so there's this question about like, what's the relationship between AI mode and AI overviews? You go from AI overviews into AI mode. It preserves the query and then gives you a new result. But if they sort of cut everything out and it was just AI mode, you cannot monetize AI mode unless you're going to replicate the existing Google search experience. You cannot monetize AI mode the way that they have currently monetized Google.
You're right, but they have shown previews of how they want to monetize AI mode, and it's gorgeous. It involves lots of pictures and like carousels and stuff like that. It was they've done iterations of it in every Google I/O, or the one that's the week after Google I/O. That's the marketers, the advertisers. Yeah.
Next.
Where they've shown kind of vision boards of what it's going to look like, and it looks really good and really compelling, and it's not even well labeled. The problem is that hasn't launched yet, so we don't know what will actually come to life. But I don't think that the lack of monetization on AI mode is forever, and in fact,
clearly not. But I mean, I think the source of their ambivalence is that they've got this existing system. It's working well for them, not as well for users, and they can't simply port it over into the new conversational experience. So they have to reinvent that, and I think it's difficult for them to get the same. I mean, maybe I'm completely off with this, to get the same degree of monetization out of a conversational interface.
I mean, I sometimes agree with you on that, and then sometimes I'm like, no, Google's greedy and they want all the money they can get.
Well, that's clearly true. That's clearly true.
But I think also probably if I put on my Google is evil hat, what I would say is a lot of what they're going to do in the next year or two is going to be, this sounds really negative, but it's what I think. A lot of what they're going to do is going to be to create kind of new moats and new ways to operate as a monopoly, that don't touch on what's already been discovered, that are kind of new and differently creative, that still leverage all the data that they've got and make it critical to their business path, so that they can say that they can't sever that part of the business, or they can't sever Chrome, they can't sever the ads, kind of baking it in to other things to make the argument that, whatever the DOJ is suggesting as remedies is impossible and would put them out of business or something like that.
What they're saying, that's what they're saying in the remedies trial.
Right.
It's unworkable, it's impossible for one reason or another, and it would threaten national security or destroy small businesses in the United States. Whatever.
So what they're doing is going to make that more and more true.
So let's move into kind of a final phase here and talk about advice for digital marketers and SEOs, because we've talked about a lot of stuff. There's still a lot more to talk about. It's very interesting. I mean, this is the most interesting time in search in recent memory. I mean, may you live in interesting times. Blah blah blah. But what is your advice to SEOs generally, to content marketers, to local SEO professionals about how to get ahead of this? I mean, in Darwinian evolution, the smartest or the strongest doesn't necessarily survive. It's the most adaptable that survives. So how do SEOs adapt, and specifically local SEOs adapt to what you see coming?
And whether SEO should stay in a relative position in terms of spending, how that might change.
You mean in the marketer's budget mix?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So SEO was never meant to stand alone. And I think like savvy marketers have known that it was rented land and that you were there by the grace of Google and that they could change their mind at any time and they could kick you out or change their algorithm, and there were never any promises made. And that's only kind of true. There were promises made, like if you let us crawl your content, we'll give you the opportunity to rank, but it wasn't rank well. We'd just give you the opportunity to be present. So I think smart and savvy marketers are looking at diversifying traffic sources. Of course, every SEO is saying double down on branding, but what does that mean? And I think together, those two pieces of advice, diversify traffic sources and double down on branding, are make sure you're doing a great job on all the social platforms, make sure you're building an audience of dedicated users, and
well, that's a brand development thing as well. Sort of building your authority, your identity on social media does create brand awareness.
Yes, but know who your users are and where they hang out online, and then know where their searches start. So for instance, something that Google's not talking a lot about is that their overall search volume continues to go up, or has for a long time, but that doesn't mean that that's the totality of search volume. A lot more searches.
It's not. Yeah.
A lot more searches are starting other places, including things like just starting on Amazon. If you know you're going to end up there, why not start there? Or starting on TikTok if you're doing research and you want product reviews that haven't been gamified by Google's algorithm or by people trying to gamify Google's algorithm. And that's where younger searches are starting their searches on TikTok and Instagram to get real information from real people rather than the brand's perspective on what they're offering. So optimizing those channels and knowing how they work, and then just testing all of the AI options. And then also base level, like understand the technology. Like if you're still doing bad technical SEO practices, like doing a lot of rendering in JavaScript, know that that's going to make you nearly invisible to all of the AI agents because they're not rendering JavaScript the same way Google is. And rendering JavaScript is really expensive. So making sure very baseline technical SEO, like don't put all your content in render in as JavaScript, put it in as raw HTML so that it actually can be picked up. And then participating. So a lot of people have been doing testing recently about participating in X/Twitter, getting a lot of people searching and talking about a certain topic that's brand new. And then it does show up in ChatGPT really quickly. Same thing, getting lots of conversation about your brand in Reddit can shape the conversation that comes out of ChatGPT and Google AI overviews.
Well, I mean, long ago, when Facebook used to go to search conferences, they would sort of characterize what was going on their site as the search before the search, right? This was conditioning search, and then people would go to Google as a sort of a secondary thing to drill into something or something that they had learned about or heard about on social media. And I think what you say about the diversification has always been good advice, and it's always been true that people have gone to other places. Maybe increasingly now they're starting other places with the frustration that many people feel about search and the way that search results are presented. But they've always looked on other platforms for information, and Google has been a piece of the journey. Sometimes the start, sometimes the middle, often the end, as people do navigational or transactional queries just to get to a place to buy something. other
So
than
one
Amazon.
change in local that relates to this is Google's asking businesses for their social feeds and then integrating that feed into the brand search result in local versus a Google post feed. How do you see that tying into this? I mean, is Google just looking at that to better understand the activity, or are they looking at it for fresh mum content, or what? How do you see that fitting in? And if Google has posts and they'll integrate Instagram and Facebook and whatever, how does that impact sort of this small business behavior?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, everything that you listed. But I think what Google says they want to do, and what makes sense for them, I think, in keeping users happy, is they want to get searchers to the best possible result. And so if they can evaluate a local business by how responsive they are on social media to questions or problems or things like that, or how much they're doing Google posts, then that's a positive signal that they're responsive and that they care about their customers a lot, that they're a real company and not a fly-by-night scam or something like that. And so I think it's just a signal of authenticity, and kind of like it might be authority or something that you might consider like a quality evaluation from an EEAT, but on a local business kind of evaluation.
The other thing I've noticed in ChatGPT and in AO is a reliance on best lists for Yelp, best bars, or
Yeah.
TripAdvisor, best breakfasts in Olean. Do you think that's, I mean, I see that frequently. So this is something I always suspected was a factor in local, but you could never see it. In generative AI, you see it as a result. These lists quite frequently, just sort of relying on a third party expertise, either ChatGPT or Google. Well, I mean, like I'm seeing Google reference Yelp a lot in AIOs for local, as an example.
I mean, and the AI crawlers and bots can't actually evaluate who has the best croissants in town. So they have to rely on stuff like that. But that it's a crutch for sure, and it's gameable. So hopefully they'll try and lean more towards social media top lists than top lists on a blog in the long run. I think they'll have to get smarter on that.
Yeah, I mean, Google sort of pointed that out a long time ago, that this was one of the common ways in which people search for things is best of, and people then, it's like the listicles that were, people used to create. It's just a response to that behavior, and Google is deceived by it. It's indexed, that gets a lot of clicks, which reinforces the pattern, obviously.
But those top list sites were put out of commission by HCU.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think Google's hoping that now they have only the good ones.
Yeah. Right. And when I see TripAdvisor a lot, I see Yelp a lot, who rely on those for historically for ranking.
I mean, I think the best of lists on some sites are legitimate because they're based on reviews and other kinds of information. So these directories are rolling this information up into best of lists for purposes of ranking on Google, but it's built on top of sort of more it's not just a listicle that somebody's created. There's something beneath it. So I think we want to wind up. Are there any sort of, obviously we'll have you on again, and this is an ongoing conversation. We've only sort of touched on some high level things here. Is there anything that you want to say about advice for marketers that you haven't already said, or where things are headed? I mean, I do think, let me make my own sort of editorial comment here. I think that Google has a lot more traffic than, whatever, pick your number, 300, Rand Fishkin's number, 373 times, or 28 times, or 7 times, or whatever the number is. But in terms of conversational AI platforms, ChatGPT is definitely the leader. It's definitely the leader in the market. People tend to like the AI overviews, and not many people have had exposure to AI mode until pretty recently. So the combination of Google and AI mode may be effective at protecting Google's traffic, but in terms of the sort of standalone conversational experience, ChatGPT far outpaces Google, and I think that Google is not delivering a great experience there. I mean, the AI overview is a weird hybrid that tries to appease many masters, and in my view, with very limited success. I may be biased, but anyway, that's your opening to say whatever you want about what should marketers do. Where's all this going?
I think the main thing is to keep your eyes open and be watching the space really closely. I think that a lot of SEOs are just kind of doubling down and saying, I need to do what I've always done, but do it better. And that's not necessarily the case. I think we all need to be open to the idea that these are significant changes that are already happening and that are in the works and getting bigger every day potentially. We need to respond to significant changes with significant changes. Like, you can't just keep doing what you've always been doing, and you should at least be testing and considering other avenues for organic traffic and foot traffic.
Well, what people are saying is, I don't really have to invest much in ChatGPT or AI optimization because it's such a tiny slice of referral traffic, and really I need to focus on Google. But what's happening is Google has been scared shitless by AI, and they are making radical changes in the search experience. So regardless of what happens with referrals from AI, the Google experience is dramatically changing, and that's what people need to be paying attention to as much as anything else.
Yeah, diversify and broaden. This is a time to solidify what you've got and batten the hatches, because we don't know what's coming, really.
All right, Mike, anything you want to add, or any last
No,
words?
I always enjoy speaking with you, Cindy. And
Yes.
while I'm glad I don't travel as much as I used to, I do miss seeing you in person.
Ditto.
Yes. Well, it's great to have you on, and great just food for thought, everything you said. So we will see you soon. Thanks everybody for listening. Make sure to check out the Gather Up Amp Up event at go.gatherup.com/amp up 2025. Remember, Mike will be there with his various insights and cranky behaviors and attitudes. Anyway, all right. We'll see you all next time. Thanks again.
Thank you.